You know that sound, that sudden rush of water where it absolutely shouldn't be? It's a sound that makes every homeowner's heart just stop. When water attacks your house, believe me, every single minute counts. So, okay, let's jump right in and try to make a clear plan for what is, let's be honest, a totally chaotic situation.
So let's just imagine it for a second. You walk in the door after a long day, and there it is, your worst nightmare. A pipe has burst, water is everywhere, and it's spreading fast. The first thing you feel is panic, right? But having a clear head and a plan, that's your absolute best defense. Seriously, what you do in the next few hours, that's going to decide if this is a minor cleanup or a massive, wallet-draining reconstruction.
So, first things first, let's talk about what that water is actually doing. It isn't just making a mess, okay? It's literally deconstructing your home from the inside out. It soaks into drywall until it's just mush. It creeps under your beautiful floors, making the subfloor swell up and warp. I mean, this is the immediate physical damage you can watch happen right before your eyes.
Okay, but here's the really scary part. It's what you can't see. In all those damp, dark spaces behind the walls, nasty stuff like black mold can start to grow. And we're not just talking about an ugly stain here. Think of it like a tiny little factory pumping out allergens and toxins that can cause some really serious breathing problems. And the worst part? It can be growing for a long, long time, completely hidden, even after everything on the surface looks dry.
And of course, on top of all that, you've got the financial headache. Honestly, dealing with the insurance company can feel like a whole second disaster. All the paperwork, the back and forth with adjusters, trying to understand the fine print, it's just this huge, complicated process that piles on a mountain of stress right when you're at your breaking point.
So you might be asking yourself, why does this happen so often? Well, it turns out a lot of our homes have these built-in vulnerabilities, little weak spots that can turn something like a heavy rain or a sudden cold snap into a full-blown crisis. Let's dig into some of the most common culprits.
You know, depending on where you live, your house could be fighting an uphill battle from day one. Take heavy clay soil, for example. It doesn't absorb water, so rain just sits there, pooling around your foundation and pushing on it with incredible pressure. Now, you combine that with old pipes or a sump pump that gives up the ghost during a storm, or a city drain that just can't keep up, and yeah, you've pretty much got the perfect recipe for a water disaster.
But hey, here's the good news. Your house will often give you little warning signs. It's not always a sudden dramatic flood. A lot of the time, it's a smaller, sneaky leak that leaves clues behind. The real key is knowing how to spot them. So let's put on our detective hats and figure out what these clues look, feel, and even smell like. Okay, first up, trust your senses, especially your nose. You know that musty smell you always write off as just old basement smell? Nope. That is a classic textbook sign of a moisture problem. And then there are the obvious visual clues, right? Like dark water stains creeping across the ceiling or paint that's starting to bubble up and peel away. These are literally your house screaming for help.
And it's not just about sight and smell, you can actually feel the signs too. Ever notice your wood floors starting to warp or buckle up at the edges? Or maybe you look down and the baseboards just look kind of puffy or swollen. Even that general sticky, humid feeling in the air can be a huge red flag that there's way too much moisture trapped somewhere in your home structure.
Okay, so the worst has happened. Disaster has struck. We are now entering the single most critical phase of this entire ordeal. Seriously, what you do in the next 2 days, it sets the tone for the entire recovery. From this moment on, the clock is ticking and time is absolutely your enemy.
And here is the number you have to burn into your brain, 24 to 48 hours. That's it. That is the critical window, based on science, because after that 48-hour mark, the chance of serious mold starting to grow just skyrockets. That's why the response has to be fast. You're not just cleaning up a spill, you are literally in a race against the clock to stop a second invasion, this time a biological one.
All right, now let's clear something up. People throw around the words mitigation and restoration like they're the same thing, but they are two totally different stages. Think of it this way. Mitigation is the ER. It's the immediate first response. The goal is to stop the bleeding, get the standing water out, and start drying everything to stop the damage from getting worse. Restoration, that's the rebuild. That happens after everything is bone dry. It's when you start replacing drywall, putting in new floors, and making things look like new again. When you're standing there looking at a flooded room, it's just total chaos. It's completely overwhelming. But here's the thing about professionals. They don't see chaos. They see a process. They have a systematic, science-based game plan to take your property from full-on crisis mode all the way to good as new.
So how do you know who you can actually trust with your home? Easy.
You look for this: IICRC certification. This is the absolute gold standard in the industry. It means the people showing up at your door have actually been trained and tested on the science of how to dry a building properly. They know how to use all the fancy equipment like moisture meters, they understand how water hides in different materials, and they follow the exact protocols that your insurance company is going to be looking for.
This whole professional process really breaks down into 3 main steps. First, they do the emergency extraction, getting all that standing water out, and fast. Then comes the most important part, the structural drying. And look, this is way more than just aiming a fan at a wet spot. We're talking about a whole strategic setup of industrial-strength air movers and dehumidifiers, and they're constantly monitoring it, using tools like thermal cameras to hunt down hidden pockets of moisture. It's only after they can prove everything is 100% dry that the real rebuilding can start.
Okay, here's a super important detail you need to know. Not all water damage is created equal. Professionals actually classify the water into different categories. So Category 1 water is clean. Think of a burst water supply pipe. But then you have Category 3, which we call black water. This is the really nasty stuff from a sewer backup or a flood. It's seriously contaminated, and it demands a completely different approach. Basically, anything porous it touches, drywall, carpet, insulation, has to be torn out and thrown away. No exceptions.
All right, let's talk about the part nobody wants to talk about, the money and the insurance. Seriously, understanding how this all works is absolutely key if you want to get through this without a giant financial migraine on top of everything else.
So here's the main takeaway for insurance. Your standard policy usually covers damage that is sudden and accidental. See that? Sudden and accidental. So that pipe that bursts out of nowhere, you're probably covered. But that slow leak behind the shower that you kind of ignored for 6 months? Yeah, probably not. And, this is so important, things like natural floods from a storm or a sewer backing up into your basement, that almost always requires a totally separate policy or a special add-on to your existing one.
So what's the secret to making sure your insurance claim goes smoothly? One word: documentation. The pros use special software, like Xactimate, which is what the insurance industry itself uses. They create these incredibly detailed reports with moisture maps, photos, everything an adjuster needs to see. This professional-level paperwork is what turns a potential argument with your insurance company into a simple, straightforward approval.
Whew, okay. We have covered a ton of ground here, right? From that first moment of panic all the way to the final repairs. So let's just boil this all down to the key takeaways, the stuff you really need to remember to protect your house and, just as importantly, your own sanity.
Look, I get it. When your basement is flooding, your first instinct is to grab every towel you own and a box fan and just do something. But here's the real bottom line, and this chart says it all. Trying to DIY this kind of cleanup is a huge gamble. You risk leaving hidden moisture that leads to mold and rot. A professional response, though, it's not just about drying things out. It's about protecting the long-term value of your home, with all the paperwork to prove it was done right.
And so finally, the crews are gone, your home looks normal again, everything is back in its place. But a new question should be popping into your head. You've just survived the cure, so what about the prevention? Because getting your property put back together is really just the end of one chapter. The next chapter is all about making sure you never, ever have to go through this again.